Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff. I'm Bobby D. Freeman, and joining me as always is my old friend and co-host. He's in love with himself, he likes the dark, and on his milk-white neck, the devil's mark. Now it's All Hallows Eve, the moon is full, and would he trick or treat? I think he will. It's Mr. Mark Edward Burford.
Well, thanks very much for that. I never really know what to say after those intros, but I'll take it in the spirit it's intended. Did you get that one? Spirit? Like a ghost? Halloween?
Yeah, I like that very much.
But I do love that song, Black Number One by Typo Negative, yeah? I haven't heard that for years. I didn't know you were a fan.
Well, I'm not really. I don't actually know where that one came from. As you know, I'm finding it harder and harder to come up with new intros for you every episode. As much as I'm clearly fond of you, that one just came into my head fully formed, almost if someone else put it there.
Spooky.
Spooky indeed. And that brings us nicely to tonight's episode, Burford. It's Halloween again.
It is our third Halloween episode, if I'm right.
Yeah, so our first one was the Ghostbusters episode. The second was the Campfire Ghost Stories. Mm-hmm. But tonight, we have something totally different for all you listeners out there.
That's right, VYSXXXX. We're giving you something brand new.
Yeah, tonight, we're going to present to you one of our own investigations. Something spooky that we've been working on for, well, nearly a year now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it started just after season 2 began. We were getting a few more listeners, and I think we got the first email probably mid-October of 2023. So, yeah, almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah, and at first we thought it was all a joke.
Yeah, at first I actually thought it was you playing a trick on me. I don't know if I told you that, but I thought you were just like, setting up a little trick to see how gullible I am.
Really? And how long did you think that for?
Well, maybe for about the first 20 emails or so. And then I started to think, well, if this is a joke, then it's gone on for a bit long and there's not a punchline.
Right. I started to realize after a couple of months or so that if this is a joke, then whoever is doing it is probably as interesting and as weird as the joke itself.
Yeah, just some dedicated weirdo out there sending us like 50 emails a month or something.
Yeah, but we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit here. So should we tell the listeners that what we're banging on about? Do you want to start or should I?
Well, you start and I'll just interrupt as necessary.
How rude. But yeah, okay. I've made some notes on the timeline of everything that happened. So it went something like this. The first email came on the 21st of October, 2023. It was from someone. You think we can say their name?
No, let's just keep it to first names.
Good thinking. Okay, so we got an email from Philip from Newcastle.
A northern lad.
Yeah, and basically his email said, well, I'll just read it out. Dear Freeman and Burford, I've been listening since nearly the beginning of Vayse, and I'm loving the show. I relate to how you guys embrace all this stuff with such curiosity, and in many ways your journey is the same as mine. I started practicing magic in my 40s, and I've had some really weird experiences. He goes on for a bit here with some fairly personal experiences, which I won't read out, but then a bit later he says, anyway, I've been having some super weird dreams lately. Some of them have been pretty fucked up, and I can't really tell you what's been going on in my messed up subconscious, except that I had one dream about Vayse. I'm not sure how it started, but basically I was listening to Vayse. It was just a standard episode. I don't think you were interviewing anyone. I think you were just shooting the shit the way you guys do, except it wasn't Freeman and Burford. It was two completely different guys. Everything was the same except that it was two guys, both English sounding, like maybe from the north of England, but middle-age-ish.
Clearly older than us then.
Of course, obviously. Anyway, Philip goes on to say, in my dream, none of this seemed weird. It felt like it had always been, and I really enjoyed the episode. I remember these imposters going on and on about Hellier, 6 ways, and the simulation hypothesis, just like you guys do. It wasn't until I woke up that I realized that it had been a dream at all. It just seemed so real. And then he goes back to describing some Crowleyan sex magic rituals he's been trying out in some pretty graphic detail, so I'll spare your delicate ears.
Yeah, okay, I'll trust your judgment on that one. So I think it's quite important for listeners to know that we get a lot of weird emails, and this one wasn't particularly different from a lot of other random stuff that people send us, which we love, by the way. Please don't stop writing to us. We always enjoy it, and we read and try to reply to everything we get sent. But the difference here was that this really seemed to kick something off.
Yeah, in a big way.
Yeah, like suddenly we were getting 2 or 3 emails a day, all saying really freakily similar things, like I had a dream about this other Vayse presented by these 2 other guys, or I dreamt I was being interviewed by Vayse, except it wasn't Freeman and Burford.
And at the beginning, I just assumed that it was the same person writing from a shitload of different email addresses using different names, right? Like, you know, a show like Vayse will attract a certain amount of people who are, should we say, of unusual sensibilities.
Nonsense and no sensibility.
Right. It went on, and we were replying to them, and it really did feel like they were coming from different people, and some of them had a really uncanny, insistent tone to them, like this one, which came in on the 2nd of December from someone called Lucy from Hackney. Freeman, Burford, just listen to your episode with Steph Quick. What a legend. I'm totally 100% in love with her and her ideas on synchronicity. Nothing has ever made sense of my life and the weird stuff that happens in it, like the words of Miss Quick. So my new rule in life is that I play that episode to people when I first meet them, and if it doesn't change their life on the spot, we can't be friends.
So, yeah, so far so completely sane and righteous.
Absolutely. She seems like a very normal person so far, very sound of mind, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but then she goes on and says, just a quick question. How come you guys changed presenters after season 1? Don't get me wrong, I love the Freeman-Burford dynamic, and if anyone was going to take over from Hine and Buckley, I'd want it to be you guys, but how come they left without even saying goodbye? No handover or transition or anything. Did those guys fall out or something?
So, Hine and Buckley, eh?
Yeah, so Lucy even names them the guys from the other Vayse. I think she was the first one to do that.
Yep, but she wasn't the last.
And I think it's worth mentioning here that by this time, we've had well over a month of daily emails, sometimes 3 or 4 a day, with people either saying that they had had weird dreams that Vayse wasn't hosted by us, or asking us why the change, but being really vague about what change they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I've changed my hair.
And it suits you, but it's not very apparent through the microphone.
Well, tell my barber you said that. He's a very wise man. Maybe he'll figure out how to give me a haircut that does make itself apparent to an audio audience. If anyone can do it, he can.
And if he does, he can gladly be a guest on Vayse. But yeah, I think we're bearing the lead here.
Yeah, I'm rambling, but I just had to get that across. Tony, if you're listening, we've thrown down the gauntlet here. The hair gauntlet.
Yeah, wouldn't that be more of a helmet? Anyway, back to the investigation.
Yeah, sorry.
Who in their ever blessed fuck are these 2 guys, Hine and Buckley? But we got more and more emails from listeners all over the world naming these 2 mysterious podcasters. We got a few different spellings. Ed from Scarmento spelled it Hind and Buckley, Hind. We got someone called Jude from Sydney spelling it Hines and Bucket. But we had a few Hines with a Z and a few Berkeleys and a load of really similar sounding names, but there were a lot that were just straight up Hind and Buckley. A really significant number, actually. So that seemed like a good place to start to make sense of this.
So I started to look them up, trying to do a bit of research. I'm no Nathan Paul Isaac, but I know how to use Google. And my first thought was obviously Phil Hine, the Chaos Magician. I mean, he's fairly close to the subject matter that we're covering here. We've talked to him multiple times on the show. So it makes sense that he's in people's subconsciousness when they're listening. But Buckley is more difficult. Jeff Buckley, Tim Buckley. I did wonder about William F. Buckley Jr. He gets mentioned a bit in Pennyroyal and Sinister Forces.
And he was a real motherfucker.
Yeah, he was a real dick with all that Knights of Malta shit and the CIA connection.
But no obvious Vayse connection.
No, nothing obvious.
But the emails just kept on coming. I think at the last count, we had over 500, all saying similar things about another Vayse.
Jesus Christ, I didn't even know we had 500 listeners. Yeah, it's 523 emails at last count, and we purposefully never even hinted anything to do with this alternative Vayse on the podcast, because if it was one guy, we didn't want to encourage the trickster or let them influence copycats. And it's worth mentioning that we did Google the name Vayse to see if there was maybe another podcast with the same name, but it clearly isn't. I checked to see if anyone was trying to rip us off, but I couldn't find anything like that either. And it had got long past the point where I was thinking that any one person could be orchestrating this. It was like, this is beyond even you, Freeman. So the whole thing had us a bit on edge. I mean, I'm a fairly paranoid guy already, but I mean, well, this is fucking weird.
Very, very fucking weird. And we've seen a lot of weird stuff on Vayse. I've had some weird experiences. I ran away from Pan in the woods that time. We did that spirit box session in the Airbnb in Yorkshire with the overheating plug. But they were isolated incidents. This was a continuous stream of weirdness. It's an unsettling feeling when you seem to be targeted by something just beyond your understanding. It started to feel like after all this time spent seeking out weirdness, the weirdness has started to seek us out.
So I think this could be a good time to talk a little bit about the Mandela effect.
Okay, so what have you got first, Burford?
So the Mandela effect is like a sort of a mass misremembering of a historical event, or something in popular culture, stuff like that. And it gets its name from a really common false memory that people seem to have, that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, which of course is... that was years before he was actually freed and became president of South Africa in the 1990s. There are loads of these things. Some famous ones are the Monopoly man having a monocle and he doesn't. Mickey Mouse wearing braces or suspenders for you American people, Bob. He doesn't. The Fruit of the Loom logo having a cornucopia behind the fruit. It doesn't. C-3PO in Star Wars being gold, but he actually has a silver leg. And there's a really fiercely debated one about something called the Berenstain Bears, which was actually called the Berenstain Bears. I think that's a US audience thing, though.
Yeah, I remember that one. And yeah, I remember them as the Berenstain Bears.
Now, neuroscientists explain this by talking about how there are areas of the brain that store memories and how there are specific processes of the brain which store memories, and associated memories are all interconnected. And that association is called a schema. So when your brain recovers certain memories, that they're all essentially mixed up with other memories in the schema. It's pretty complicated, and I don't fully understand it, well, because I'm not a brain scientist. But obviously, we'll link to some articles in the show notes. But other scientists put the Mandela effect down to confabulation, which is the much simpler idea that your brain just fills in gaps in your memories with, whatever the hell it wants. So you end up remembering details that never happened. There's other similar ideas like priming, which is where your brain contaminates your memories with stuff that it learns before an event. So say you go into a gig and you've been told that the band are really loud, but when you see them, they actually play like at normal volume or even more quietly than normal. You might still remember them as being loud because you were primed for that. And then the opposite is contamination from post-event information. So if you see a film that you quite enjoy, but you read 10 reviews then saying how shit it is, you might actually start to remember that the film was far shitter than you actually thought it was.
Like the Matrix Resurrections.
Yeah, but that actually was a really shit film.
Hey, I quite enjoyed that movie. The Battle for Zion was actually really cool. But anyway, do you think that's what's happening here, the Mandela effect? Like, why would people be misremembering anything to do with a little independent podcast about weird stuff?
Well, there are some more fringe theories, I suppose, about the Mandela effect.
Okay, now I'm listening. I was listening already, but now I'm doubly listening.
Listening with both ears now.
Both ears and my third ear, like my third eye. You're opening it with this mind-blowing information.
Would you say that's your final frontier?
Okay, Captain Burford, boldly take Vayse where no man has gone before.
I'll certainly try to make it so.
I'm fully engaged.
Oh, no, I've run out of Star Trek jokes. They did have the mirror universe, though. That brings us back to the Mandela effect, because the more out there theories for the Mandela effect revolve around the idea that you're actually switching realities. So, like, when you remember the Berenstain Bears, your memory isn't playing tricks on you at all. You're remembering it exactly how it was, or how it used to be before you switch realities. So you used to live in a reality where it was the Berenstain Bears, but now you live in a reality where it's the Berenstain Bears.
Okay. This reminds me of the idea of quantum immortality, like the idea that you can never actually die because at the moment of your death, you're shifted onto another timeline, a bit like Quantum Leap, except it only happens when you die.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, that could be tied into it too. Perhaps at some point you had a fatal accident and you left the Berenstain Bears behind, and now you're happily living in a world of the good old Berenstain Bears. God, this is hard work. I can see why I usually leave the long bits of research to you.
No, that was excellent. Really good explanation of the Mandela effect. So this is essentially the idea that we started to pursue, that maybe these people were somehow remembering an alternative reality where these Hine and Buckley bastards had their grubby hands on the luxurious steering wheel of the Vayse mobile. But what we're then faced with is a massive elephant-shaped cryptid in the room. Evidence. How the hell do you find any evidence of a past that has changed? The whole point is that the timeline has changed. There shouldn't be any evidence.
It was when we arrived at this point that we thought we'd better bring in an expert. Vayse isn't a really super heavily researched podcast. We just don't have the requisite skills, but we know a guy.
We always know a guy.
Yeah, but it's usually like the checkout guy at Aldi or Walmart who sells us tofu and peanut butter. We get to know those guys a little too well, maybe. But in this case, we do know a guy who has the skills to help us with this particular mystery. A friend of the podcast that many of you are familiar with. We've interviewed him, or maybe Hine and Buckley interviewed him, who knows, at the end of this first season of Vayse. All the way from the East Coast of the US, it's none other than Sequoyah Kennedy.
Hi, guys. It's very good to speak with you again.
It's good to have you back. Incidentally, do you remember talking to me and Freeman, right, and not Buckley and Hine?
Yeah, of course. You guys are the only Vayse for me.
Oh, thanks, man. That's sweet. We've been talking to you online about our little situation with the other Vayse. The idea that perhaps there was another Vayse in another timeline with different hosts and all that. We wanted to know if you'd ever come across anything that would give any indication of a possibility of being able to trace back other timelines. If that doesn't sound completely insane.
Well, it does sound completely insane. But that's why I'm all about it. So, yeah, like, I've read a lot of shit about the Mandela effect. Stuff that's clearly just people misremembering shit. Like, if people remember Captain Kirk saying, "Beam me up, Scotty," then it's got to be the Mandela effect and not a collective, multi-generational, brain fuckaroo and shit like that, right? But it also makes sense that if there is something like what you guys are experiencing, something which is very specific and harder to dismiss, that if hundreds of people are all remembering the same specific past, and as much as I love you guys, like, you're not exactly, in the wider public consciousness. You're not exactly the Berenstain Bears.
Berenstain Bears.
Fucking A. So if we accept that, the ideas of another timeline, the idea that there really was another Vayse, and if we accept the idea that there has been a switch in timelines, and if we accept that it's possible that the memory of the other Vayse could have survived the switch between timelines, then is it possible that there has been some kind of digital memory that has also survived? Because why would biological memory be any different from digital memory? I mean, like, that, a thousand fucking reasons, but like, we have to start somewhere, right? Have you guys ever heard of Wiki Boneyard?
No.
All right. Well, it's this website, right? Like, you can't find it on Google. This is dark web shit. You have to know what you're looking for, and even then, it's constantly changing locations. It's constantly moving, so no one can trace it back to any particular individual or individuals, right? No one knows who hosts it. No one knows who created it. These guys have learned from the mistakes of WikiLeaks and all that shit. No one wants to be going to jail for this. So what is Wiki Boneyard? Well, let's start by saying that because no one knows where it's coming from or who's hosting it, no one knows whether this shit is real or not. But there are some pretty heavy indicators that it's legit. Basically, Wiki Boneyard is a graveyard for Wikipedia articles that have been removed or drastically altered to remove information which is, allegedly, highly classified or illegal or in some way compromises state secrets, particularly in relation to certain Western governments. So, this is, supposedly, some pretty heavy censorship and suppression of information, and you're not going to find this fucking stuff on the Wayback Machine. No, this censorship has been done with expert surgical precision. So you get stuff like, let's give you some stupid examples, like ex-President Jimmy Carter. Apparently, for a few hours, his credit card details were on his Wikipedia page. This was caught quickly and removed, allegedly. And the reason that I'm using this example is that the card details on Wiki Boneyard are legit. They have been linked back to Carter. I mean, obviously, the card was canceled years ago, and of course, there are other ways that people could have got those details, but still, this lends some legitimacy to the whole thing.
Hold on. Why hasn't this been reported in the mainstream news?
I mean, that's a good question, right? This is all part of the legend surrounding this site. If no one knows who's hosting it, and they can't pin it on anyone, and if these people can make whole Wikipedia articles, and if supposedly the people who are writing them just disappear, they can keep it all out of the mainstream news sites, right? And there's a shitload of other stuff on there. Some pretty fucking spicy details of UFOs landing and making contact in the middle of fucking crop circles in Wiltshire, UK, and shit like that, right? Articles on Russian psychics and their connection to the moon landings, shitloads on the Kennedy assassination, and old Charlie Manson, all the stuff you'd expect. And look, I'm not going to talk about that on here or like anywhere, and that's not because it's not fucking true, if you see what I mean, but it's all there, if you know where to look. And I know where to look, so after you guys contacted me, I scoured the internet looking for anything to do with Vayse that wasn't linked to either of you, right? And there is precious fucking little. Then after a few fruitless hours, just for shits and giggles, I ran Vayse through Wiki Boneyard. And hey, what do you know? There was, at some point, allegedly, a Wikipedia entry for Vayse.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's only a small article. It looks like there is only ever one author/editor, M. Warburton 85, and no one else ever added anything. I'm guessing it was taken offline pretty quickly for whatever reason. So this is what it says. Vayse was an independent podcast hosted by Peter C. Hine and Stephen James Buckley. It launched on September 7th, 2022. The podcast included a number of guests, usually talking about the supernatural or the paranormal and weird stuff, often with a pop cultural leaning. The music was written and recorded by Buckley. The podcast abruptly ended in July of 2024. All episodes have since been removed from circulation, and no recordings have been confirmed to exist. The final episode released did not include a guest, and was a discussion between Hine and Buckley about simulation hypothesis and the many worlds interpretation. Citation needed. Neither Hine or Buckley have been seen or heard of since. Citation needed. So, this is obviously really recent, and it's only recently been taken down. And what's doubly weird, right, is that like most podcasts don't get a fucking Wikipedia page. The Nonsense Bazaar didn't have one. I mean, like if the fucking Newkirks don't get a Wikipedia page, then well, and Vayse doesn't have one now either. If you go on to Wikipedia now, but like if this stuff is real, it did at some point in some connected timeline.
Wait, what do you mean by connected timeline?
I mean, I've probably said enough.
Okay, well, man, thanks so much for helping us out on this.
Yeah, you're welcome. No worries. I'll catch you guys soon. Peace.
So that's quite a lot to take in.
Peter C. Hine and Stephen James Buckley. I've got to admit, after that call with Sequoyah, I was pretty rattled.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Yep.
So how are we going to go forward with this?
Well, I've started to reach out to a few other people who might be in the know, trying to look for people who might have some knowledge of other worlds, parallel dimensions, alternative realities, simulation hypothesis, but it's inexplicably difficult to find people who go on record talking about these things.
Yeah, for some weird reason.
I even reached out to this artist and author from the U.S. called Joseph Matheny. He created this thing, Ong's Hat. Have you heard of it? I actually think a few of our guests have mentioned it in passing, but for listeners who might not be familiar, Ong's Hat was the internet phenomenon which surfaced at the end of the 20th century, based around this conspiracy theory about clandestine institutions which have developed secret technology which allowed people to travel to parallel dimensions. It turned out that the whole thing was just an internet game, and not actually real at all, but you can see why I wanted him to talk to us. And there's loads of people who'd still bet their farm being totally real even after Matheny categorically said that it wasn't. But when I tried to look for him, it turned out that he hasn't been heard of in years. No one's certain of his whereabouts or even if he's still alive. I tried contacting him through his website, his social media. I contacted his publisher. I even contacted a few of the other people involved in Ong's Hat itself. Nothing. The guy's a ghost. He just vanished. But there's a pattern forming here. No one wants to talk to us about the alternate dimension thing, and the people who might be up for it, we can't get a hold of.
But of course, we didn't want to disappoint you, dear listeners. So we couldn't just let this mystery be. We started to dig.
One of the working theories that we have for what could be going on here is that all of this is just a random coincidence. Then I guess the Wiki Boneyard thing is harder to explain.
Yeah, but coincidences do happen, don't they?
Do you think there's such a thing as a coincidence, though?
But okay, what about synchronicity? I mean, the nature of synchronicity is that it is significant and it is magical. So maybe the universe or the phenomena or something is just really trying to draw our attention to something at this moment.
Yeah, we talked a lot on Vayse about synchronicity, but all this made us really curious as to where the line lies between coincidence and synchronicity and, I don't know, something else completely. So we spoke to someone who knows a lot more about synchronicity than we do, blogger and researcher Stephanie Quick.
Hi, Steph. How you doing? What's it like in sunny California today?
It is windy today here, actually, and it's lovely to be talking to you two gentlemen today, as always.
The pleasure is always ours, Steph. So, you know about what's been happening here with us over the last year and the emails that we've been getting? What do you make of all this insanity?
Yeah, this is some really fascinating stuff. I was blown away when you told me all of this, and when I read some of the emails, I mean, I've seen some weird stuff in my time, but this is a new level of weird. Of course, I'm really hyped you guys contacted me with this. Okay, so you asked me about coincidence and synchronicity. Are these phenomena that you're experiencing just coincidence? Is it synchronicity? And what's the difference? So I wanted to give you an example of coincidence. It's a bit of a classic, but it illustrates the point nicely, I think. So there was this guy, Roy Cleveland Sullivan. He was a park ranger in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia, which is a beautiful part of the world, by the way. And I know because, as it happens, my dear friend Sean Chapman, the art hobo, also worked there as a ranger, which is how I heard about Roy. And whichever way you want to slice it, this guy was either the luckiest or the unluckiest man alive. He was struck by lightning 7 times and survived each time.
Whoa, poor bastard.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I always like to look on the bright side and try to be a kind of glass half full kind of gal and say he was lucky because he kept on surviving, but this could not have been fun for him. I just imagine Zeus up there throwing these cartoon thunderbolts down on him like a nasty-ass game of lawn darts. Now, on to the math of it. The odds of being hit by lightning over an 80-year period are about 1,000 to 1. So the odds of being hit 7 times, well, I had to drag my calculator out, but that's 1 in 10 octillion. Now, you have to adjust that figure to allow for the nature of the guy's work, his location, and so on and so forth. But even then, it's still pretty unlikely. But you see, the fact is that it happened. It really did happen. I mean, the odds of just being born are like 1 in 400 trillion, and no, that's not the number of times that you need to get frisky in order to be sure that you'll have a baby. Although good luck to you if you want to try for those kinds of figures. I salute you. Stay hydrated. Okay, so what I'm saying is that the odds of most of what occurs on any given day of any given person's life, the people they meet that day, the food they eat, the things they say, the music they hear, the odds of all of this occurring in exactly the way it unfolds in an average day is almost infinitesimal. And when you think about things like that, nothing is commonplace. Everything is incredibly unlikely. And that's the beauty of life, isn't it? I mean, what are the odds of me talking to you guys right now? That our paths would cross like this? That I would say these exact words to you on this exact day, right? So massive odds aren't really anything unusual, if you'll excuse that slight contradiction. You see, the odds aren't what's interesting. What's interesting is, does it mean anything? Does it mean anything that this poor guy got fried 7 times? Well, maybe, maybe not. It might just mean that he really needed to get himself a pair of rubber-soled shoes. But there's only Roy Cleveland Sullivan himself who could answer this question. What is the significance to him? And if the only significance to an event is that the odds against it happening are really high, then it's probably coincidence rather than synchronicity. See what I mean? See what I did there? It comes down to meaning. But synchronicity, that can be quite ordinary, commonplace things which just happen to have personal significance to you, right? You're thinking of a friend, you turn on the radio, and it's their favorite song. What are the odds of that song being on that station that you're listening to at that exact time? Well, that depends on the song and the station, right? But it really doesn't matter. What matters is that it's your friend's favorite song, he was on your mind, and maybe it's time to give him a call or drop them an email or something. Anyway, all this is a very long-winded way, which I know everyone who knows me is shocked that I'm getting long-winded about saying something, but this is a long-winded way of saying that I think what you have here isn't a coincidence or a synchronicity or even a coincidentity. I think this is something altogether more spooky. This looks like some kind of magic to me. It really does. Have you guys tried looking up any magical rituals for changing timelines or for changing the past or skipping over to a parallel universe or anything like that?
No, not yet, but we definitely will do now. And we played you what Sequoyah had to say about the Wiki Boneyard thing.
Love Sequoyah, our big tall tree man. Well, the Wiki Boneyard thing, that was especially interesting because that suggests that if the timeline can change, and if that is actually what's happening here, then there can be digital traces of it left behind in all the emails that you've been getting. These are memories that people have, ethereal traces left in people's minds and coming out in dreams. Instead of the dark web, this is in their dark consciousness. Half-remembered dreams, half-forgotten memories. So many world religions make references to multiple timelines. Buddhist texts talk about heaven above, hell below, and infinite worlds that stretch out to the left and right. Hindu Puranas talk about innumerable universes besides this one, and that all these many worlds and universes are interconnected. I personally believe that dreams are the places that we can regularly catch glimpses of other worlds. And the beauty of dreams is that there's numerous methods developed over millennia for incubating dreams, and we dream every night, so that method of investigation is quite accessible. Now, I strongly suspect that the most precise method for getting info on other timelines may be by location, but it's so fugitive and rare and happens spontaneously. You can't really make it happen, and at least anyone that I know. Actually, my friend Sean had a few instances of bilocation, and he did bring back accurate information that was verifiable. We used to room together in Oakland. We lived a couple of blocks down from one of the 1897 airship sighting spots, and this incident of his happened about 100 years later. So one day he went for a walk, and during this walk, for about 1 minute, he experienced himself walking in Oakland, but also walking along a verge near his childhood hometown in Idaho. And he had the distinct impression for the small period of time that he could choose to relocate physically to Idaho through a shift in his attention, like he had the choice. which is pretty profound and wild to think about it. But then he realized that he didn't have his wallet or any cash or even like a quarter, so he couldn't call anyone to come pick him up. And he'd have to walk like several miles from this place in Idaho to his like closest friend's house. So he stayed here in Oakland for like practical reasons. Though later he did check and he did have the weather conditions correct. So there you go. But the beauty of dream incubation is that it's a lot more accessible and we have many methods for doing this. So I'm thinking dreams it is. Have you guys had any dreams about the other Vayse or...
No, nothing. You, Freeman?
Nothing. What about you, Steph?
You guys don't want to know about the content of my dreams. But no, nothing about Vayse. You know what I was thinking, though? The guy who wrote the Wikipedia article about the other Vayse. Can you track him down? Maybe find out where he got the information about the other Vayse from?
Yeah, we're trying to do that at the moment. It's difficult because all we have is a username and we really don't have the expertise for that sort of, digital forensics, but we know a few people who might.
Let me know if you find anything. Sorry I couldn't be more help on this one.
Steph, you've been a massive help. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, Steph, thanks. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure as always, guys. You guys keep well.
So, as always, we got way more from Steph than we were even hoping for.
Yeah, just talking it through with Steph really energized me and really got me thinking about this in a few different ways. So I think I agree with Steph that all of this, the emails, the stuff with Sequoyah, probably goes way, way beyond coincidence and even synchronicity. It feels somehow more purposeful. What do you think, Burford?
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Synchronicity, well, was it Jung who defined it as that originally? It was something like events that appear to be meaningfully related but lack a clear causal connection.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, these things seem to have a clear causal connection. It's just that the causal connection seems impossible, mainly because if the other Vayse exists, then, well, I think there's a very good chance that we don't.
Man, that's a freaky thought. I like to think that we are the real Vayse, at least in this dimension, and if the other Vayse is from a parallel world, why are they intruding on ours?
That's a good question. So in an effort to try and figure out what we do next, I tried to break down Steph's advice into basic steps. 1, coincidence and synchronicity. We've already talked about this. It's probably the least likely out of any explanation.
Agreed.
2, magic. Steph seemed to think that the cause of this could be magical.
I think that could be a fair assessment, and I've been thinking along similar lines, but where do you start with something like that?
Well, I was thinking along the lines of maybe there's some kind of ritual that could be used to contact the other timelines. Maybe a curse or a hex has been put on us. There could even be like a trickster spirit at work here.
Man, this stuff is really naughty. If only there was such a thing as an occult detective. Someone really knew how to investigate this stuff properly. If there was someone like that, I swear I would have them on every season of Vayse.
Well, quite. So the magic thing seems like it might be something worth looking into. And thirdly, Steph mentioned trying to track down the guy who had created the Wiki Boneyard article. And we're already on with that.
Yeah, for listeners, we've asked a certain Darragh Mason of the Spirit Box podcast if he would use some of his intimidatingly good research skills to see if he can track down this M. Warburton 85. And he's kindly obliged us, but hasn't turned up anything just yet. And to be fair to him, with so little to go off, it's got to be like trying to hammer smoke into a beer bottle with a baseball bat.
And with that complex but accurate metaphor...
Actually, that was a simile.
No, you're a simile.
And weirdly, that was a metaphor.
Whatever it was, it kind of brings us up to date with where we are on this. And I'm really not sure where we go from here.
I think the only avenue left to us is the magical element. It feels like it somehow makes sense to look at it in a magical way.
In my limited reading into ritual magic and witchcraft, I've never come across anything which even hints at merging or switching timelines.
There's some stuff in Weaving Fate by Aidan Watcher about altering your past, but that's really for the person who's carrying out the working. It helps them make peace with things in their past that they want to change. It's not for making huge changes to the wider timeline.
Yeah, I've tried Googling it, and all I get is a load of Reddit and Quora articles basically saying it isn't possible, and a load of really pulpy sci-fi short stories, some of which are pretty good, but that's not really the point.
We need to somehow do a really deep dive into the history of ritual magic to see if this kind of thing has ever been attempted before, or even hinted at in any grimoires or anything like that. I just don't know where we can find a resource like that.
Yeah, who in their right mind would have that kind of knowledge?
Fellas!
Doug, great to talk to you again.
For any listeners who don't know, we've managed to arrange a call with none other than Douglas Batchelor of the What Magic Is This podcast. It's really good of you to give us your time, Doug.
No problem. Happy to help you out.
So we filled you in on the background of what's happening by email before the call, and you said you may have an idea.
Okay, so I do have an idea. It's a long shot, but there's one ritual. It's really pretty obscure. I've been studying the supernatural, the paranormal, the esoteric, and the weird for pretty much consistently 20 years, and only became aware of this one about 18 months ago. It feels really unlikely that it's connected to what's happening with you guys and the other Vayse, but it really is the only ritual I've come across which actually has the purpose of changing timelines or altering dimensions, or however you want to look at it. The only reason I heard about this ritual at all is a friend of mine, a researcher. They don't talk publicly about their research, so I won't name them, but they recently translated a bunch of magical diaries and texts from 18th century Bavaria. Or Bavaria, whatever it is. Don't ask me how they got a hold of them or why they got a hold of them. I guess this type of very early industrial age magic is very much their jam, and it's all the better for us that it is. It's so good that there are people doing this kind of research. We're living in a really brilliant time for this stuff. I know I sound like a broken record when I say that, but we truly are. I checked with them before I replied to you guys to make sure that they were okay with me sharing this info, and they were cool with it. Anyways, this particular working, this bizarre bit of magic, and it is truly bizarre, translates into English as the boneless ritual. And thanks to the work of my friend, we have a pretty good idea of the history of the ritual and the intention behind it. So to understand this bit of magic, a little background is probably needed.
Doug, I wouldn't expect anything less.
Bavaria was a pretty tempestuous place in the mid to late 18th century. It was still technically part of the Holy Roman Empire. It was at war with Austria on and off for years, but Bavaria had a lot of natural resources. They had agriculture and minerals. So there was a wealth, and there was what we would now refer to as an Enlightenment. The Academy of Sciences and Humanities was founded in Munich in 1759. But there was also a lot of superstition, and some quite spooky religious sects around that time emerged from the Catholics and the Jesuits, who were the major religions of the time. It was into this milieu that an unfortunate but fascinating man by the name of Bernsman Holtz was born. He was born into a wealthy aristocratic landowning family near to the Austrian border. He had all the type of privileges of birth, except that he was afflicted by a horrible physical condition. According to what we know about Bernsman Holtz, he was born without any bones at all. Now, obviously, medicine back then isn't what it is now, and there are no other recorded cases of this having happened before or since in the whole of recorded history. So I'm just going to put that out there. If he was really born entirely without bones, he's the only person that's ever happened to. I mean, there are some modern conditions which are very rare genetic disorders like hypophosphatasia, which affects the bones. Maybe this is a hyperbolic account of something like that. We don't know. Okay, so there's that. Anyway, accepting that and moving on, he wasn't expected to survive infancy. In fact, he wasn't expected to live more than a few days. But his father was a man of power, a lord or a duke or something, the equivalent of that in Bavaria, whatever they have. You know, we don't actually know his title. He was just a man of high social standing, authority, or power. And he searched for any doctor who might be able to save his baby son with this awful condition. Apparently, no doctor, not a single one, would even take on the case. The prevailing attitude of the Bavarian medical profession at the time was truly awful as it is. They were kind of like, letting him die would probably be the best and kindest thing to do. It's awful, but it was just beyond them. It was still all leeches and bloodletting back then. So, out of options, and with the medical profession, Holtz's father turned to the superstitions of the time. And, well, I feel like I'm doing it a disservice calling it superstitions because basically he turned to magic, right? Medicine wasn't going to help, so he turned to the dark arts.
Seems like the reasonable thing to do.
Right? So he finds this guy, by all accounts. He was living in the forest. He was a sorcerer, a Germanic shaman, or the local warlock. We don't really know much about him before this point. And he's known throughout the accounts by just one name, Chloris, which in Old German means pale. So it's unclear whether that was his actual name or just something that he went by because of the pallor of his skin. And that's all we know about Chloris's background. But he took one look at this child, who must have just been a few days old by this point, not expected to live much longer, and he called for all of these ingredients, apparently beer, milk, honey, bone broth, and a small amount of pig dung, a little Schweinscheiße, and he fed this to this baby. I guess his parents figured that there was nothing left to lose at that point, and miraculously, the child survived. And there are actual historic records that show that Bernsman Holtz lived to adulthood and that he had some kind of deformity, so something was going on here.
Well, as a confirmed middle-aged man with aching bones myself, I've got to get myself some of that pig dung beer.
I know, right? But it seems that Chloris became a kind of professional servant or exclusive physician to Bernsman Holtz. Maybe a kind of Rasputin situation going on there. Let's just say the villagers had their suspicions, and apparently Chloris was known to them as Blasser Teufel, or Pale Devil, translated into English.
That's pretty fucking metal. We should totally start a band called Blasser Teufel.
I'm in, 100%. So, by all accounts, which really there aren't many, Chloris was responsible for bringing Bernsman Holtz up around magic and witchcraft. Both his parents died when he was a teenager. It was pretty common back then, but of course the local townsfolk blamed Blasser Teufel. And apparently Holtz was a total natural at magic, despite his disabilities. It's actually Chloris's diaries that have survived, and it seems that Holtz was actually a very powerful wizard, and Chloris was actually quite afraid of him. When you read the translations from the diaries, you see what starts out as caution when Holtz was a kid turns into suspicion, and eventually outright fear as Holtz became an adult. Anyway, this very long and drawn-out introduction is to get to the good bit. Bernsman Holtz was obsessed with using the magic that he and Chloris were developing to access and even pass into other worlds. Holtz had a belief that wasn't far off the Everett Many Worlds interpretation. This idea that there are potentially infinite worlds parallel to this one, to ours.
Yeah, Steph Quick mentioned that some religions believe that too.
Absolutely. And that could have been where he got some of his ideas from too. He had his whole family fortune to spend, and, well, what else are you going to do when you've got no bones? I'm sorry to laugh, but seriously. He spent it all on books, which Chloris would read to him, and a metric shit ton of magical equipment, which, to be fair, seems completely sensible to me. So there's every chance he would have had in his collection some Hindu or Buddhist texts. There's actually a load of his books held in a collection in the, I believe it's the Deutsche Museum in Munich. And the descriptions of the equipment are like something straight out of Frankenstein. They were operating in that time of early electrical experimentation when it was actually seen as a type of alchemy. So he had lightning conductors and Jacob's ladders and all these crazy contraptions which were supposed to harness electricity to focus his magical power. It's nuts. It's insane. And it's been suggested by some people that this may have actually been an influence on Mary Shelley when Frankenstein was written about 40 years later. I don't know, because people also say that about Andrew Cross, you know, the guy who apparently created those little insects using electricity, even though those experiments took place about 20 years after Frankenstein was written. It's like, all right, science history bros, I think Mary Shelley was quite capable of coming up with Frankenstein all on her own. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and it sounds like what Holtz was doing here was quite different to Frankenstein anyway.
Right. And what Holtz was actually trying to do was open up a portal with some kind of electro-magical ritual. To be honest, the notes in Chloris's diaries are a bit sketchy about how exactly the boneless ritual was carried out. Chloris does say that he kept separate records, diaries, and notes of the rituals he and Holtz were creating, and it seems like the bits that survived that weren't acquired by the museum in Munich went to a private collector in an auction in England. The trail apparently goes dead right there, so... Although there are some suggestions that they all ended up with the Golden Dawn, or as I call them, the Golden Yawn. Although we know those guys can't keep secrets, so if they had something like the boneless ritual, we'd definitely know about it by now. Anyways, Cloris seems to be completely terrified at Holtz at this point. Holtz was apparently appearing in Cloris's dreams, and Cloris genuinely believed that Holtz was controlling him and making him do some of this stuff against his will. And Holtz does seem to be deranged by this stage. The whole purpose of the boneless ritual seems to be to open a portal to a dimension where nobody had any bones at all. He seemed to want to find himself in an entirely boneless world where he could use the advantages that he had gained from learning magic and science to become king, a kind of grand mage of the boneless people, and rule over an entirely boneless world. And the wildest bit from the diaries was that Holtz seems to have wanted to use Cloris's flesh and blood and organs, everything except his bones, as an offering to open the portal. And Cloris, from his writing, seems to feel that he is so deeply under Holtz's control that he's completely powerless to stop him. It actually seems like Cloris is quite looking forward to the release. It's madness, but the best ones seemingly always are.
That's insane. Did it work?
Well, we don't know, right? Historical records of the time show that Burnsman Holtz's castle was completely destroyed by lightning and fire in an electrical storm in 1778. The spooky bit is that Holtz's body was never found. And get this, a skeleton was found in the wreckage. And it was completely clean. No burned flesh on it. No blood, no internal organs, just a white skeleton, seemingly untouched by the fire. How cool is that? So you could say, well, they were clearly using some pretty far-out equipment there trying to focus electricity. If lightning struck at just the right time and temperatures got hot enough, perhaps Holtz and Cloris's flesh was vaporized, leaving behind Cloris's skeleton. But, of course, Holtz didn't have a skeleton to leave behind, right? So that's one explanation. Or there's the alternative. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you guys. Great to talk to you again. Take care and, sweet dreams.
So, Jesus Christ, I wasn't expecting that.
I mean, that was kind of what we were looking for, but that whole account is seriously gnarly.
Turns out Doug really does know what magic this is. What do we do with it, though? I mean, I don't feel like that necessarily brings us any closer to knowing whether there's been a magical rite carried out or not.
I mean, I still feel like I have all my bones. Do you?
I think so. I mean, it's been a few minutes since I checked, but yeah, I think so.
Okay, Darragh, could you start that again for the listeners?
No problem. So just so your listeners know, you brought me up to date on your little situation here and asked me to dig into that Wiki Boneyard article that Sequoyah had found about the other Vayse to see if there's any way of tracking down the guy who wrote it. Now, I've heard some really crazy shit about the Wiki Boneyard. You know, there's some people who think that it's all just one big hoax, the whole fucking thing. That it's just someone or a group of people been a bit spooky on the dark web. And if you follow that line of thinking, then even if we did manage to track down this M. Warburton 85 person, the one who created the article, we'd probably just end up knocking on the door of whoever created this whole massive hoax. You know, stranger things have happened, haven't they? But at the other extreme of possibilities, there's this idea. So I was talking to this self-proclaimed techno-mage in this little pub in Brighton a couple of years ago, and she claimed to be able to feel Wi-Fi radiation, to be able to get Spotify beamed directly into her brain, and she claimed to see these little blue creatures made of static electricity everywhere. Anyway, you know me, I'm not going to hold anyone's beliefs against them, absolutely not, and when she told me all this weird shit, I decided that she was worth having a couple of pints with. No, more than a couple of minds. We did a bit of a sesh. But I want you to know a bit more of her story. So, along with countless other outrageous and frankly improbable things, she started to bang on about the whole Wiki Boneyard thing, and she had some ideas, pretty fucking weird ideas, about the people who were editing these forbidden Wikipedia articles, that they were like the guardians of the timeline, or some ridiculous comic book shit like that, and that there was someone or something adjusting the timeline that we're currently living in. And then there's another group of guys who run a kind of cleanup operation for those timeline adjusters by removing any residual traces of the old timeline from the new one. And the way that she put it was, the Wiki Boneyard was the creation of a group of tech-savvy sorcerers who wanted to preserve the traces of these destroyed pasts for whatever reason, I don't know. It was all a bit Philip K. Dick. But interestingly, she reckoned that most of the people who write these forbidden articles won't remember doing it anyway, because the timeline that they wrote the article in has been changed. And so they're no longer the version of themselves who wrote that article, if you get what I mean. And she kind of hinted at the fact that anyone who could remember having written these articles from the destroyed timelines was dealt with as part of these cleanup operations. So if she's right about that, and she may just have been really fucking high and talking complete shit, but if she is right, even if you track down M. Warburton 85, they probably won't remember a thing about writing that article about the other Vayse. And if they did remember, then odds are that someone has found them before you have, and, well, you know the way that story ends. But anyway, I'm no stranger to poking around Wikipedia to find out who's writing the articles, so I started looking into it for you guys, and there is an extra layer of encryption to be dealt with here. If you look on normal Wikipedia, then finding all this information is pretty straightforward. It's available openly, but on Wiki Boneyard, they encrypt a lot of the data and metadata relating to the creators and editors, you know, like their locations, IP addresses, all that kind of stuff. I suppose that's either to protect the identity of the hoaxers, if you believe that's what it is, or to anonymize all these guys who don't even know they've written the articles in the first place because of all the shifting timelines and all that jazz. And if you believe what the scaredy girl in the pub in Brighton said, maybe they're doing it to protect the creators and editors from being erased by these fucking time police or whatever the fuck they are. Anyway, for whatever the reason for it, the encryption itself was pretty half-assed, which is fairly suspicious in itself, isn't it? And it barely slowed me down at all. And what I found was, the same article that Sequoyah found is still there on the Wiki Boneyard. And, I found the same editor as Sequoyah, this M. Warburton 85. And they have an IP address in the north of England, somewhere just north of Manchester. And that's like your part of the world, Mark, right? Then, and we're about to take a few little leaps of faith here, but assuming that the M is an initial, Warburton is a last name, and 85 is the year of their birth, I took that information and I ran it through the electoral register, the 2021 UK census, and a few other resources that I'm probably best not to mention here right now, but checking that information against the location of the IP addresses and any other scraps of metadata that I could get from the article on Wiki Boneyard, I managed to narrow it down to about 23 possibilities. So that's 23 people who are the right age, with the right name, in the right location at the time that the article was written. And I'll pass on those details to you via email. Of course, now you've got to allow for the fact that whoever wrote this article could have been using a VPN or some other way of hiding their location, in which case they could have been literally anywhere in the world. Or they could have been using someone else's computer, or they could have had just up sticks and left wherever place they were living in when they wrote it. People do that. I mean, there's no such thing as a sure thing, is there?
Maybe not a sure thing, but we're a lot closer than we were.
Seriously, guys, though, take care, yeah? I know I've talked to you guys, but you do need to be careful here. Whatever you're looking into, doorways into other worlds, shifting into other realities, there's a precedent in folklore for this stuff. And it's not your happy clappy, love and light, fucking Disney-ified fairy tales either, yeah? You're potentially dealing with some really, really dark powers here. I mean, to force your way into other realms unbidden is, you know, it's not great. It's one of the great taboos. You don't just walk into the fairy world uninvited, right? Especially not using magic. You're going to just piss things off. You're going to really piss things off you don't want to piss off. You know, I'm talking entities here. Like the Fae, the Jinn, or any other number of other folk, they will strip the flesh from your fucking bones for trespassing onto their ethereal real estate. This does not end well for those who are too bold, those who have ideas above their station, or those who just choose to fuck around and find out. You get where I'm coming from here, yeah?
Gotcha. Thanks, man.
All right, anyway, it's been really good to catch up, mate. Stay safe, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon. Have a good one.
So that call was recorded late Friday night. It's now the evening of Wednesday, the 23rd of October, 2024. And Burford and I have been doing some digging on our own, and we're actually making some pretty exciting progress.
Well, I'm glad you're excited, because while you've been sitting in the comfort of your home drinking coffee and talking to an old friend, I've been actually getting my hands dirty to the point of where I've actually been going and knocking on doors to try and track down this person who wrote this bloody Wiki Boneyard article. This is how desperate and curious and weird I've got to come with this stuff.
You're doing God's work, Burford, and to make it harder for you, we didn't even know whether if we found the person who had allegedly written the article or whether they would actually remember having written it.
So it's like looking for an invisible needle in a haystack that may not contain any invisible needles.
But you kept on searching for that elusive prick, right?
Yeah, I see what you did there, Freeman, and I like it. But yeah, against all odds, my door knocking did turn something up. What I'd done is, because we're looking for something which they might not remember, I asked them a series of questions, which I said was for a digital survey, and I kept it that vague. I had 23 names and addresses from Darragh. It was on the 13th door that I knocked, and I actually got something. And that was the door of Mr. Michael Warburton. He goes by the name Mike, and he was born in 1985. So it is possible that he was the M. Warburton 85. He was actually pretty friendly, and he didn't treat me like a lobotomy victim. And I had my field recorder with me, so with his permission, I recorded our conversation. Okay, we're recording. Let me know if you want me to stop at any point. So I think that we should just start by running through those questions that I ask you again.
Okay, sure.
So, have you ever written or edited a Wikipedia article?
No, never. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Do you know what Vayse is?
Apart from what I said to you before about it being the way that Americans say vase, like, you know, the container you keep flowers in, no, it doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay, do you know or have you ever heard of Peter C. Hine or Stephen James Buckley?
Well, this is the one where things get a bit weird. I don't normally talk about this kind of stuff. I don't really expect anyone to believe me. This is some weird stuff.
Don't worry, this is our stock in trade on this podcast, which is called Vayse, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, back in March, I had a series of weird dreams. I don't often remember my dreams, but these were so clear that I wrote them down when I woke up. On the surface, the dreams all seem really ordinary. The weirdest thing is kind of how real they felt. It was, like, uncanny.
Go on, this is great stuff. And by the way, I really appreciate you telling us this, and trust me, I've heard some weird stuff in my time, so you're not going to shock me.
The basic thing in this dream was that there was the same guy in all of them. He was just a fairly ordinary looking guy, dark hair, about my age, late 30s, early 40s. I'm 6 foot-ish. He was maybe a bit shorter than me. He was wearing half a suit, like suit trousers, a shirt and tie, smart shoes, no jacket. I remember these details so clearly, like a really clear picture. In the first dream, I was standing in the middle of this cornfield, and we were laughing and just talking shit. I can't remember what about. Just some TV show or movie or something, maybe some Richard Stanley thing. I have it written down somewhere. But that was it. We just took these photos. The dream was in colour, but the photos were in black and white. And the next one, it was me and this same guy again, and we were in a car park, just an empty car park, and I was taking photos again. There was no one else around again, and we were singing. This sounds stupid, but you know the theme tune from Wallace and Gromit, the Plasticine Puppets? We were singing that bit of music and having a laugh again, and he was striking ridiculous poses, and I was taking photos. And then I had a third dream where we were in a cinema watching a film, some folk horror thing. I remember it had this creepy rabbit puppet in it, but not a lot more. And he was wearing the same sort of clothes, and we were just watching the movie. there was like nothing threatening about it. It felt like we were friends, and it felt quite ordinary, but it was just so real. It felt so real.
And you'd never seen this guy before?
Not in real life, no. Not at that stage. Not that I know of. I'd never met him, but I knew his name. I remember this bit really clearly.
And what was it?
It was Peter C. Hine. But I didn't call him that. I just called him Hine. Like, I never called him Peter in my dream, and he never actually told me what his name was. Like, I suppose you wouldn't if someone was already a friend and I just called him Hine, but this is when things get even weirder.
Weirder? Well, I like the sound of that.
Well, in March this year, I went to see Sun play in Manchester. It was an incredible show, loads of smoke, this wild light show, the usual cloaks and cowls and detuned guitars, really, really great stuff. But I was standing there in a kind of trance, completely absorbed in the music, and it was really kicking off. Like, the show was reaching its peak. We're about an hour and a half in, and these great clouds of smoke were being blown into the audience so that you could use the layers to create these moving prisms. And I got lost in this light show, and I'm feeling the guitars, actually feeling them, like, in my bowels. And then I turned to my left, and standing there with these wisps of smoke kind of clinging to him is the guy from my dream. It was Hine.
What? Hang on. For the listener here, Mike hadn't told me this bit before I started the recording, so this is the first time I'm hearing this. Mike, this is actually, like, mega weird.
I know. And this kind of thing has never happened to me before. I was looking at him, and it's smoky and it's dark, and there's these flashing lights, so I obviously think that I'm imagining it, or that maybe something in the music and lights has put me into a dream state or something. I mean, I was in like a heightened state from the show. That's what kind of Sun do. They have this kind of really dreamlike quality. So at the time, I think it's really weird, but I'm not like freaked out. I just think I'm hallucinating or something. But I keep an eye on him for the rest of the show. People don't tend to move around a lot at Sun gigs. Everyone stands pretty static. So I wait for the show to end. It was awesome, by the way. See them if you ever have the chance. And and I kind of, I'm an introvert, but I kind of plucked up the courage to go and talk to this guy. And all the lights come up, there's no encores at this kind of show, and everyone turns to walk out, and that guy's still standing there, and he's still Hine, the guy from my dream. He's even wearing, like, the shirt and tie and everything. It's insane. So I think, well, I can't pass up this opportunity, so I actually go up to him and say hello.
You actually speak to him? This is fucking wild.
Yeah, I speak to him, and he seems a bit surprised. I think he's come on his own, and his ears are probably ringing because mine were, and I ask him, excuse me, are you Peter C. Hine? And now he looks shocked and says, yes, he is. It was getting awkward, and I don't really have anything else to say. I wasn't expecting this at all, so it's not as if I have anything prepared. So it probably wasn't the best idea, but I just came out with it and told him about my dreams. He gives me this blank look, I think maybe a bit of fear, but he's looking towards the exit and kind of excuses himself, which is really kind of rude, really. And he walks over to the merch stand. He must have really, really loved the gig, but then who didn't? So I had nothing else to say. I mean, he clearly thought I was crazy. And what else is there to say?
That sounds intense.
It was, but that was it. I haven't seen him again since, and the dreams seem to have stopped now too.
I know that I said I hear all things all the time and nothing would shock me, but I've got to say I'm actually a bit gobsmacked.
Well, now it's my turn. Why are you asking me these questions? How did you know about Hine before I'd even mentioned him?
Okay, so now that's a long story.
Hearing that still gives me chills. Incredible work.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, I have to admit, I started to get a bit scared while I was just sitting there in his front room talking to him. It's all just so weird.
But listener, our investigations didn't end there. Wait for this. We managed to talk to Peter C. Hine himself.
Dun, dun, dun.
After Burford's excellent field investigations, we had a fair bit to go off. We had a name and an approximate age, a description and geographic location. Inspired by Darragh's research, I decided to do some of my own. I figured that with Hine always appearing in a suit, that he had some sort of office job or that he was some kind of professional. So I checked his name on LinkedIn, but he wasn't on there. which makes sense because our original search would have brought that up. So I searched LinkedIn for Hine with the geographic location of Manchester, and one of the results it came up with was Charles Hine, a lawyer in Manchester working in-house for. So the picture matched the description and age that Mike had given us, Peter C. Hine, and so I went and checked the roll of solicitors on the Law Society's website, and there he was, Peter Charles Hine. So now, not only do we know what he looks like, we know where he works.
I'm kind of concerned we're actually giving people stalking advice here. I mean, I hope I'm not this easy to find.
I should have been some kind of paranormal detective or something instead of a podcaster. Of course, now I couldn't resist. I called up reception and asked to speak to Charles Hine, and it worked. He was slightly taken aback when I spoke to him on the phone, as you would expect. And at first, he was, let's say, actively hostile, threatening me with legal action and all sorts. But after we mentioned the Sun concert and Mike's story, I could tell that he was kind of curious. After some careful persuasion, he agreed to speak to us here on Vayse. And we've just come off a call with him now. So, dear listener, this is how it went.
Peter, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, okay. I'm only doing this because you guys have piqued my curiosity and to check if I'm safe. I don't really know what's going on here or why you guys want to speak to me. I don't believe in a lot of the things that you guys were talking about before we started this recording. I mean, I'm a practicing Catholic, and this all sounded a bit spooky to me.
Oh, don't worry, Peter. We just wanted to ask you a few questions.
And nobody really calls me Peter. I mean, that's the name on my birth certificate, my passport, but people call me by my middle name. So that's Charles, but my friends call me Chaz.
Okay, Chaz, we just wanted to ask a few...
It's Charles.
Okay. Charles, we just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Fine, just keep it quick and don't get too personal.
Yeah, don't worry. I know this must be a bit weird, and it's hard to know how to process things like this.
Weird is definitely the word. Like I said, I don't really have time for any of this weird stuff.
So, I spoke to Mike Warburton a couple of days ago. He said that he'd met you at a Sun concert. Had you ever met him before, and what did you think when he approached you?
Yeah, that was the beginning of all this weird stuff. I was at this gig in Manchester, which was weird in itself. I've not really listened to any of that band before. I'm not really even sure how you pronounce their name. I was just there because my girlfriend was into them, and she bought me a ticket to go with her, and then we split up. So anyway, I just kind of went out of spite. It's not really my sort of thing. I mean, I don't get it. None of the catchy tunes of bands I like U2 or Coldplay or Snow Patrol or Mumford & Sons. There was nothing like that. No bangers. It was one long, loud, drony song, as far as I could tell. If you could call it a song, it was just noise to me. Anyway, I stuck it out because my spite was more intense than my discomfort.
Yeah, it's really the stuff about Mike that we wanted to know.
The weird guy. Okay, yeah. So after the show, I was getting ready to leave. I was looking through the crowd to see if I could see my ex, just to make sure that she knew that I'd gone and stuck it out. And then this guy walks up to me. I'd never seen him before in my life, and he started by asking if my name was Peter Hine. I was suspicious because, like I said, I never used that name, so I was already on guard. But then he started going on to me about like being the man of his dreams or something, like all this stuff, which frankly made me a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, I don't blame him for that. Who would? And the guy had balls. I mean, I'll give him that. But I just didn't want to get into all that. So I let him down gently and politely, and then I went to loiter by the T-shirt stand for a while because I wasn't going to get a T-shirt. God no, I just didn't want to chance the weird guy following me out of the hall. I just waited till he was gone, and then I left cautiously. I just don't have time for strange people, you know.
Okay, and have you ever heard of Vayse?
Well, not until Bob called me at the office earlier today. And that's really not a good name, by the way, Vayse. It sounds like stomach medicine or something. Give him a dose of Vayse and that diarrhea will clear right up. Is that where the name comes from? Because it's really not clear what your podcast is about. No wonder you guys don't have many listeners. I wouldn't listen to a podcast called Vayse.
All right. To each their own. Do you know anyone, or have you ever known anyone called Stephen James Buckley?
I don't know where you're getting this information from. And it's starting to freak me a fuck out, if I'm honest. But, all right. When I was growing up, maybe 9 or 10, living in Garstang, near to Lancaster in Lancashire, there was a kid who lived next door to me, and we used to be friends, and I'd get invited to his birthday party, and he'd get invited to mine, even though we went to different schools, because he was my neighbour. Anyway, I guess it was maybe his, 9th birthday party. We went to this indoor adventure park near Blackpool called Tarzan's. It was cool. I always loved going to parties there. It was all tunnels and rope bridges and ball pits. And while I was there, I met this other kid at the party. He went to my neighbour's school. I don't know his middle name, but his name was Steve Buckley. He seemed like a bit of a naughty kid, to be honest. But I remember that he made me laugh, so we played together for the party. Now, I wouldn't remember that at all. I wouldn't remember this Steve kid at all if it wasn't for the fact that he died a couple of months later. I remember the kid next door telling me I'd never known anyone who died at that point, maybe a couple of a great aunts or something, but definitely not a kid. And so to find out that kids could die, well, that made a big impression on me. And that's the only Stephen or Steve Buckley that I've ever known.
You know how he died?
No, not really. The story that I'd heard was that he'd recently moved to Garstang from somewhere further up north, maybe near Penrith or somewhere up there. What I heard from my neighbour and a few other kids, local kids, was that he was having a really hard time fitting in at his new school, and that he really missed the town that he came from, and that one day he just ran away, trying to get back up there to where he used to live. The rumour was that he made it back up there, but realised he had nowhere to go, so he tried to camp out in the woods, staying in some caves or something like that, and his body was found a few days later. Anyway, why are you guys asking about Steve Buckley?
It's to do with the alternative Vayse that we were telling you about before we started recording, a version of this very podcast that is presented by Peter C. Hine and Stephen James Buckley. We're trying to figure out if it's a parallel world or some sort of alternative history from an abandoned timeline or something.
Oh. Well, I don't believe in any of that shit.
Right you are. Well, I don't think we have any more questions for you now then. Do you have anything, Bob?
I have a few, but none that I'd ask on a friendly podcast like this one.
Fair. Thanks for talking to us, Chaz. All the best.
Am I getting paid for that?
So that was Peter C. Hine.
I can see why his version of Vayse has been banished to an aborted timeline. Shame they didn't send that asshole along with it.
Perhaps it's not a good idea to insult a lawyer on the podcast, though. Isn't that a defamation of character?
Only if it's not true. Something has been troubling.
No shit.
Okay, a lot has been troubling me. But there's been one thing that's been on my mind in particular.
For the 100th time, Freeman, yes, I think Tony Soprano went to Valhalla.
Thanks, man. No matter how many times I hear it, it always makes me feel reassured.
Anytime.
But there's something else.
Jimmy McNulty?
No, well, yes, but that's a conversation for another time. The thing that's bothering me is that I'm not sure how I feel about all this parallel world stuff. I just can't make sense of it.
Welcome to my world, where nothing has made a lick of sense throughout the last 40 years. You just got to style it out.
And you do that well, Burford, but I feel like I need a little help hitting my stride, so I finally found someone who's actually willing to talk to us about parallel dimensions and all things otherworldly. And it was someone hiding in plain sight, a friend of the show and previous guest on Vayse, AP Strange. AP, pleasure to have you back here on Vayse.
Hey, good to be here.
Thanks so much for taking an interest.
Sure thing. Yeah, I actually wrote a long blog post on parallel dimensions and alternative timelines a couple of years ago, and I titled it, Nothing, Anywhere, All Out of Sync. I think that's what it was called. And it was about how literally no one can agree on a damn thing as soon as you start looking into this topic. Basically, being confused and wary is the correct response here.
It's a great article. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Thanks. So I guess as good a starting point as any for this many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which was devised by Hugh Everett in the late 1950s, and you'll see a pattern forming here, but no one can agree on whether this interpretation is valid, least of all Everett. Everett is perhaps better known for his other giant creation, his son Mark Oliver Everett, singer and songwriter for the alternative rock group The Eels.
You're such a beautiful freak, AP.
Oh, and you're such a beloved monster, Bob. Essentially, what Everett proposed was a way to do away with the idea of the collapsing of the wave function. So what does that mean? Essentially, according to how quantum physics is commonly understood, an electron can exist in multiple positions with multiple velocities at any given time until it's observed. You can look into this with the double slit experiment for more information. It's pretty mind-blowing stuff and pretty hard to get your head around. But basically, the electron exists in a kind of delocalized cloud of probability, and somehow at the quantum level, the act of observation ties into a specific position and velocity. So when you look at it, it manifests as a single discrete entity, which is also how I believe cats work. Whatever it may or may not have been saying with the many worlds interpretation is that when you tie the position and the velocity of an electron down to specific position and velocity, the universe kind of splits into parallel universes in which every other possible position and velocity of that electron exists. And obviously, if this is actually happening, it's happening all the time on a scale which is close to infinite, and it follows that most of the differences between universes must be so small as to make no tangible difference at all, right? So every time you flip a coin, you're splitting the universe into a reality where you got heads and a reality where you got tails. There's actually a pretty great Futurama episode based on this concept called the Farnsworth Paradox. Not only that, but maybe the universe where you dropped and lost the coin, and maybe there's one where the coin falls straight into your mouth and you swallow it and don't know. Or maybe there's one where it lands completely on its side and stays standing upright. That happened in the Twilight Zone episode.
Wait, so if these other worlds exist in theory, do you think it's actually possible for a person to travel between them?
Well, this is the $23 billion question. Now, science isn't going to help you with this. No self-respecting materialist egghead would stick their neck out that far. In fact, most scientists are going to give you a clear no. Go straight to pseudoscience. Do not travel or communicate between parallel universes. Do not collect $200. But just because science says no way, Jose, that doesn't mean it's not possible. In fact, it's a pretty good indication that there's probably something interesting happening here. We can look at historical accounts. There's a famous story about this guy who showed up at Haneda Airport in Japan in 1954. He was well-dressed. He was a businessman. But he seemed weirdly out of place, so eventually the airport officers pulled him to one side, and they were afraid he was a trafficker or a smuggler or something. The man emphatically rejected the accusations. He told them that he was from Touareg, a country between France and Spain. Now, I don't know how much time you spent in Europe, but there is no country called Touareg. And where the man was told this, he whipped out his passport, and there it was. It was a passport from Touareg. The passport had official stamps from other countries and everything. It looked official. I mean, why would anyone fake that? It's just causing him a massive headache. So the airport officials just didn't know what to do with this guy, and they took him to a hotel room for the night. But one way or another, that man was never seen again.
Fuck. That's really pretty creepy.
Yeah, but these things happen all the time, man. There's an account from Germany from all the way back in, 1851 of some guy found wandering the streets of Frankfurt, dazed and confused, saying his name was Jofar Vorin. Jofar, I think. Jofar Vorin, and claiming to be from the country of Laxria. In the UK, you have the children of Woolpit that they just had green skin and crawled out of a hole. Said they were from a dark world called St. Martin's Land. In 1905, in Paris, a guy shows up speaking an unrecognizable language, claiming to be from a country I can talk, called Lisbia. So these cases of misplaced people happen all the time and always have been happening. And then you've got the whole multi-dimensional theory of UFOs, like the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis. John Keel, Jacques Vallée, all these ideas are based on the concept of beings that are able to travel into our reality from other dimensions, right? I'm not a gambling man. I'm not the kind of guy who spends a lot of time searching for a unified theory of the paranormal. But if I was, and, parallel universe version of me is...
AP Stranger?
Yeah. But, right. So, if AP Stranger was looking to place a bet on a unified theory of the paranormal, he could do a lot worse than betting on parallel dimensions. There's these ideas that the intrusion of us beings from other planes of existence explains not only the UFOs and the fairies, but cryptids. Just look at Mothman or Bigfoot. You could be looking at appearances of the Blessed Virgin Mary or even ghosts or apparitions. All could conceivably be explained by the collision points between realities. The story I told you when I was on Vayse last time, you can read it on my website too. The beings that I saw in my bedroom as a kid, the ones that I described as being kind of like Mickey Mouse's gloves, were they from another dimension too? These are all rabbit holes you can go down, and maybe all of these rabbit holes lead to different worlds, which in turn are filled with their own multitude of rabbit holes. I've listened to recordings that you guys sent me. That's interesting stuff, especially the stuff Doug Batchelor gave you. It sounds like it's out of a horror movie or something. I've never heard of Burnsman Holtz, but yeah, of course, travel to other worlds is something that magic could be used for, and I totally think it's possible. It's not necessary for my belief, but going back to what I was talking about with the parallel universes being the unifying theory, maybe that's what magic is. So, say that you need $5,000, or you're going to lose your house. In desperation, you do a magic ritual, and 3 days later, you get an inheritance of exactly $5,000 following the death of a great aunt that you never even knew you had. And you can find hundreds of accounts similar to this. What actually happened there? I mean, no one knows, right? Did the magic ritual you performed kill your long-lost great aunt and then ensure that you were named in the will? There's a bit of that sounds a bit bloodthirsty and grim, but maybe the magic ritual you performed created an administrative error in the bureaucracy of the many worlds, whereby one of the thousands of rich old ladies who dies every day of natural causes left money to someone with a similar name to you. I mean, maybe you performed your magic ritual, went to bed, and woke up in another universe. A universe exactly the same as the one from the day before, except in this one, you had a great aunt who died and left you the money. You're the only person who knows that anything has changed. It has a certain appeal, doesn't it? And maybe this is why magic works, and maybe that's why it sometimes doesn't work. Because sometimes you successfully cross into a parallel universe, and other times you don't. And here we encounter an important difference between science and magic. If you can rely on your magic to be perfect, let's say 2% of the time, and I'm deliberately picking a low number here, but if that 2% works exactly as you wanted it to, you're incredibly fucking powerful as a sorcerer. The catch is that out of 100 rituals, you don't know which are going to be the 2 that work, right? Until they've actually worked. But if, as we've just been talking about, that means that for the 2 times out of 100 that you do some ritual or rite or whatever, you're actually skipping between dimensions. And that's pretty fucking significant, right? Like, that's something we shouldn't be ignoring. But here's the thing. It doesn't hit the repeatability criteria for scientific method. Not even close. So you can't call it science. No laboratory is going to study you. You're not going to be in Nature magazine or New Science. But you know that you can rely on the 2% success rate. You just don't know how. You don't know when. But you do know that it happens. So Science won't support you for that. But do you care? It doesn't matter, right? When you're there with your cowl and your candles and your smells and your bells and your birch wand or whatever, scientists aren't going to come and knocking on your door to stop you. They just don't give a fuck what you're doing. A good proportion of them probably take it personally that you believe something that they can't prove. But fuck them.
Testify, my brother. So, running with the idea that every time magic works, you've effectively switched universes, what happens to the universe that you leave?
Well, we're way out here. Way out. I don't want to make it sound like this is what I believe, and I think this is possible, but I did know this guy once. I'm not sure I should even talk about it for a lot of reasons, but anyway, he was a magician and a tech guy. Super smart. And super weird. And he swore up and down he could travel between universes. It was some mixture of magic and science and something to do with eggs or something. I don't know. But by his reckoning, he had a success rate of a lot more than the 2%. And the way he told it, he was stepping between realities regularly. And I asked him the question that you just asked me. His idea was, and don't quote me on this, this is his idea, not mine. Don't apply it to me. Don't write me angry letters. But his idea was that maybe reality works like all of nature. That it's a sequence of fluctuations which are always tending back toward equilibrium. So these different realities are all competing for the same space and resources, and that maybe most of these other realities just branch out and then die off, like animals in an ecosystem that have been outcompeted. Like the gray squirrels outcompeting the red squirrels in the UK, or like saplings dying off because the light is blocked by the larger trees, right? There's only so much reality to go around these other timelines, and not long after they're created, they just kind of deteriorate or degrade or break down into a kind of existential compost. And then that's used to just kind of feed and form and build the more successful ones.
And do you think you'd know if you were in a dying timeline? Would you be conscious of your reality just crumbling around you?
I don't know, man. I'm not going to lie to you about this. The whole idea feels a bit insane to me. It's like survival of the fittest, but for competing realities. I mean, what does the fittest even mean in this situation? But okay, the thinking is that the doomed tangent universe would become unstable. It would disintegrate, it would be unable to sustain itself, and it would break up and maybe be absorbed into the stronger one. The part that always makes me uncomfortable is, well, I have no idea what would make one timeline stronger than another. What exactly are the criteria for a stable universe? What tips one into instability? Who makes the decisions as to which ones have to die? I don't know, man. These were all ideas that this one guy told me a few years ago.
Yeah, I get that. And who was this mystery man?
Sorry, dude. I don't think he'd appreciate me telling you that.
Okay, understood. As always, AP, it's been very informative, very weird, and a little frightening.
Okay, gents.
There's nothing like a quick chat with AP Strange to make you reconsider the whole universe and your place in it.
But as scary as that was, the conversation made me feel somehow more at peace with the idea of the parallel universe.
When you say peace, that whole thing about some weird, mysterious doomsayer talking about the collapse of tangent universes and competing realities behaving in quasi-Darwinian ways, the weaker ones basically being the food for the stronger ones. You and I have got very different ideas of what it is to be at peace.
If you wait for complete safety, security, and certainty to bring you peace, you're going to be waiting a long time.
All right, Alan Watts. But maybe we could agree that finding a way to exist without a constant sense of impending doom might be a nice little treat for once, you know? It's not like I'm saying I need total certainty, but perhaps a suggestion that the universe might last long enough for me to finish re-watching The X-Files wouldn't be that too much to ask.
Well, if you want to talk about certainty, should we tell the listeners what we found on Stephen James Buckley over the past couple of days?
Excellent segue, and an impeccable lesson in changing the subject.
I thank you. So after that wonderful interview with the very pleasant, polite Peter C. Hine, we Googled the name Stephen Buckley together with the approximate year in which he died, and we actually managed to find a few reports from newspapers which totally confirmed the story. Stephen Buckley was found dead at the age of 9 on the 9th of November, 1991. It was just outside a little village in the north of England called Great Corby, and his body was found in some man-made caverns called the Weatherall Caves. I'm not really sure why, but there was surprisingly little in the newspaper records about it. And after that, our research hit a bit of a dead end.
Yeah, so Hein was right about Buckley, but what connects either of them to Vayse? Is there anything we're missing here? So we decided to crowdsource it, and we opened it up to our Instagram followers. I did a post asking if anyone knew any more about the case of the dead kid, Stephen Buckley, in Great Corby in 1991.
A pretty grim thing to put out on the Vayse Instagram, but we got a pretty good response, and thanks very much to anyone who sent us any links or information.
Yeah, thanks to our community. Brilliant as always. But there was one person who contacted us with a story that was so particularly fascinating, weird and spooky, so much that we had to get her on the show. Her name is Helen, and she lives in Preston in the north of England.
And her connection to the Buckley mystery added a whole angle that we could never have possibly imagined. So when we contacted her, we asked her to tell her story on the record for Vayse, and she agreed only on the condition that we don't give her last name because some of what she says implies other people. So, dear listener, strap on a pointed hat.
I thought you were going to say something else then.
You know, Jesus is listening, right?
Yeah, of course I do. He emailed us last week to say, remember Vayse being hosted by Hein and Buckley.
We're both going to hell. I do apologize to anyone who is easily offended.
Yeah, we're really sorry about your thin skin. Perhaps you should fuck off and listen to Haunted Objects instead.
I could literally hear the listeners abandoning us. So to anyone who, for whatever reason, is still listening, strap on a pointed hat, light the candle in the jack-o'-lantern, and let the darkness into your hearts, because this is about to get spooky.
Okay, Helen, please could you tell us the story that you told us by email?
Of course, I'm Helen. I'm 33 from Preston, Lancashire, born and bred. Just to be clear, I'm not somebody who believes in ghosts and stuff. I understand other people believing in that, but what I'm about to say is pretty mad. So this is a long time ago when I was at primary school. I'd have been about 10 or 11. A new girl started who moved from Great Corby in Cumbria. I'm going to call her Sarah, but that's not her real name. I've not seen her in years. So she moved to our school, but it must have been difficult because everyone had their own friend groups and stuff at the time she started. She was proper quiet to start with, and people thought she was a bit weird, but I really got on with her, and she was weird, but I liked that. She was weird in a good way.
Is there any other way?
She had loads of mad stories, and she was really funny. Maybe she was chatting shit, but I didn't mind. It was the way she told the stories that was great. Anyway, I'm waffling. So there was this one story she told about this spirit ghost thing called polypores. So the polypores was allegedly the ghost of this young lad who was probably about our age at the time he died. Back in like the early 90s, this lad got lost in the woods and died. When they found him, he was half in, half out of the ground, covered in all this weird glowing fungus stuff. And that's obviously where he got the name from, because polypores are a type of mushroom. But where it got weirder is that people said you could summon him. She said if you light a candle on a moonless night and say the name polypores 3 times in front of a mirror, he'd appear. And he'd be all glowing and fungusy, and he'd make you like mega rich, but then in return he'd take your soul. Classic. So he'd come find you, and you wouldn't know when. It could be in a week or 30 years. Sarah said he'd just keep doing this until he found his true love, which is quite nice, really. It seems weird because he was a child, but I think he just wanted to find peace and move on. Anyway, at the time, it was just a story that Sarah told that she made really fun and really spooky, and every time she told it, it just got longer and longer and more elaborate. No one else in Preston knew the story, but apparently everyone in Great Corby knows, and it's been around for years. There's like loads of different variants of it. The Radiant Boy, the Blue Boy of the Weatherall Caves. There was this song I can't remember if Sarah brought it with her or if someone at school made it up, but I can still remember it. Don't say his name, don't make a sound. Here's your voice from underground. Draw your curtains, lock your doors. You can't keep out the polypores. And Sarah, she actually knew the polypores boy before he died. Her sister was about 10 years older than us, and back in the 80s there was this boy called Stephen Buckley in a class who'd moved from Great Corby when he was about 9, and he ran away back to Great Corby on his own and died in the woods. He was so brave to do that at that age. It was amazing, really. And so, yeah, that was it.
Whoa, I'm getting the chills. That is so creepy, especially in the context of what we've been told by someone else who claims to have met Buckley. The story's almost identical, minus the murderous ghost bit. I mean, I'm not doubting your story here, but all these years later, how do you possibly remember the name of a boy who died before you were born, who's in a different village, and that a girl you once knew told you about you when you were 10 years old?
I wouldn't normally, but Sarah wrote Helen loves Stephen Buckley forever, as in the number 4 EVA on front of my maths book, and I got absolutely bollocked for it. And our teacher, Mrs. Richmond, ripped off the cover and chucked it away. But I got it back out of the bin on the sly and kept it, and I've honestly still got it now. Not sure why I kept it, it's just got a vibe, I don't know.
Holy hell. Do you know where it is? Can you send us a picture?
Yeah, no worries.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes.
I'm not finished. There's another even weirder bit.
Wait, that's not the really weird bit.
So pretty much everyone at school knew this story, but most people were really scared of it. And there's this one girl called Claire, again, not a real name, who was a proper go-getter, even at 10, and wanted to be really rich, like Jeff Bezos rich. Jeff Bezos. So she decides she's going to call on polypores. So she comes into school one day and she said she went out in the woods the night before with all the summoning equipment and everything and did it. No one actually saw her, so I can't definitely say she did, but by the time we left college at 18, she was already a millionaire. I shit you not. She was selling shoes on some website or something.
Fuck me!
Then, a couple of years ago, Claire was in a car accident and she died. She was only 30, and her husband, who was in the car but was fine, said that they crashed trying to avoid some guy in the road, someone who was about 6 foot, and the mad thing is, he said he had this weird blue glow around him. I don't know if he was chatting shit, but it seems weird, and it's been on my mind since, so I'm wondering if it was him, if it was polypores.
No fucking way. Oh man, that is weird. I mean, that's really scary.
Yeah, I've had it before. You know, like when I've been driving and I've been really tired, and you know, you see things out the corner of your eyes, like figures stepping out into the road, but nothing like that.
Well, yeah, maybe, but she did get rich, and she did die, and her husband said he saw it as well, so... To be fair, I never really saw the polypores as something threatening. I just thought he wanted to grow old with someone he loved, which is so sweet. That beautiful blue boy just lost in the woods, looking for love. But yeah, so Claire got rich and she died, so obviously she wasn't the love of his life.
Oh, I just got the chills.
Thanks very much, Helen. You've been absolutely brilliant. You've really helped us out.
Hang on, just one more question, if I could, before you leave. Did you ever try to summon the polypores yourself?
Sorry, you're breaking up, Bob. Say it again.
I was just saying...
Hello? Are you on mute?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I just asked
Sorry,
if you...
I can't hear you. I'm going to have to go now anyway. It was lovely speaking to you all. Bye.
She seemed nice.
Yeah. You don't think...
What?
Nothing. Nothing.
Bob, you're acting weird, and I'm really sensitive to when people are acting weird, and you're acting weird.
You know what?
What?
I think there's only one thing left to do.
Oh, no.
I think we're going to have to go to those caves in Great Corby and try to summon the polypores ourselves.
Oh, fucking hell. Are you serious?
Sure, why not?
Well, the death thing for a start? I mean, I could probably go on, but I'm not sure there's any need. We just talked about perhaps avoiding putting ourselves in the path of impending doom.
But this is going to be great podcasting. The listeners are going to love it.
Yeah? But what about the death thing?
It's fine. I know loads of protection rituals and banishing spells. There's really nothing to be afraid of.
Still, I am a bit afraid of the death thing.
Don't you want to know, though?
Yeah, of course I do, but I'm also quite enjoying, being alive just now.
Don't worry, Burford. As long as I'm there, nobody's going to harm you.
Yeah, it's someone with no body harming me that I'm worried about.
Okay. It's Friday, 25 October, and we're on the train to Weatherall Station. Weatherall's a small village on the other side of the river from Great Corby, and there's a stretch of woodland which runs south along the river connecting both villages to the caves where the body of Stephen Buckley was found over 30 years ago.
This is the last will and testament of Mark Edward Burford. I just want to say for the record, I'm here, against my will, kidnapped by Bob Freeman.
You wish, buddy.
Yeah, I do actually. Then I wouldn't have to pay for my fucking train ticket to my certain doom. In all seriousness, I am actually a bit freaked out by this one, Freeman.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, I can think of other ways to describe it.
Alright. It's nearly 7 o'clock p.m. and the late autumn sun is nearly completely set.
Yeah, because obviously we couldn't do this in the day. It had to be at night.
Conditions are perfect. There's a thick covering of cloud, but no rain yet. That's due later. Possible storms.
Yeah, perfect. And I haven't even bought my brolly. Why are we going out in the dark and cold and rain again?
We needed a moonless night. New moon isn't until Halloween, so I had to pick a day with total cloud cover.
Of course. We can't go out and do this on a beach in Mexico. It has to be the rainy northern English countryside.
Okay, we're in the woods. It's pitch black. Doing this part with a flashlight. We're walking along the side of the river. It's called the River Eden, which seems somehow portentous.
Yeah, just how I like to spend my Friday night. What the fuck was that?
What?
Gotcha.
Son of a two-ball bitch. Okay, we're in the Weatherall Caves. Guidebooks call them St. Constantine's Cell. They're not naturally occurring caves. They were cut into the rock on the bank of the River Eden centuries and centuries ago, and they're still known by some locals as the Weatherall Safeguard because they were used by monks as a place of safety during the Scottish incursions.
Not really feeling the safety too much now.
It was here that the dead body of Stephen Buckley was found in 1991, and there's a strange energy to this place, hard to describe in words.
Fucking creepy?
Okay, so it's actually quite easy to describe in words. We seem to have the place to ourselves, no other people around. I haven't seen any animals. There's an eerie hush about this place, like I haven't really felt anywhere before. And usually, before I start on any paranormal investigation, I like to do a tarot reading just to catch the energy of where I am, to see what we're dealing with here, to get a feeling for the place.
What deck did you bring?
It's just a Rider-Waite-Smith variation. It's the Dark Forest deck.
Yeah, of course it is. And here's the rain.
So I'm just making sure the deck is properly shuffled. I'm Just going to do standard 3-card spread, past, present, future. See what that shakes loose. Okay, alright, that feels good. I'm going to split the deck and take the card the deck offers me. And we've got... Burford, can you shine your flashlight over here? We've got... the devil.
Great. That sounds really positive. Everything is looking great for us here tonight, isn't it? The devil. Very nice.
Nothing to worry about, dude. We've talked on the podcast before about how the devil card isn't necessarily anything too menacing. It just speaks to the shadow self, drawing attention to unnecessary attachments or negative habits and damaging behaviors.
Damaging behaviors like going into dark caves at night to summon murderous spirits?
Well, it's speaking to instant satisfaction at the expense of long-term well-being.
What, like a spirit who'll make you rich in the short term but make you dead in the long term?
The first card drawn only refers to the past situation of this place, though. Let's pull one for the present moment. Oh, shit! It's the devil!
In my limited understanding of tarot, there's not supposed to be 2 devil cards in any deck?
I don't know. Maybe my decks got mixed up somehow? The devil from another deck managed to get into this one?
Okay, even if that's true, so what? You just happened to pull both devil cards out of the deck?
It does seem unlikely, doesn't it?
Yeah, okay, so what now then?
I guess we pull the third card, the one that refers to the future. Okay.
Freeman, how many devil cards did you have in that deck?
Well, this is a new one on me.
Yeah, the devil does seem a bit more menacing when there's 3 of them, wouldn't you say?
I'd say that.
Please tell me that this is enough to stop you going through with the ritual now. If the cold and the rain and the dark don't stop you, and the fact that if everything goes according to plan, then the best that can happen is that we call up the murderous ghost of a 9-year-old kid. If none of that puts you off, then surely the unholy trinity here, you think that's maybe trying to tell you something?
This has never happened to me before, but aren't you curious? We could actually be about to touch the etheric plane.
And yes, I'm curious, okay. Terrified, but curious, yes.
Then let's do it then.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so for listeners, we have a mirror, the kind that you might hang in your bathroom, 2 medium-sized pillar candles, white, and a Zippo lighter. The moon is completely obscured by the clouds. The rain is getting heavier, but we have some shelter here in the cave. Alright, that looks okay to me. What do you reckon, Burford?
I think what our woo-woo paraphernalia looks like is the least of our worries tonight.
Good enough for me. We have the mirror on the floor, angled so that we can see ourselves in it, and a candle on either side. Okay, do you want to say it or should I?
Happy for you to do the honours.
Cool. Ritual voice, ritual brain, ritual voice, ritual brain. Come on, Freeman. Come on, all right. Polypores, polypores, polypores.
You all right, Freeman?
I guess.
Did you hear that too?
The thunder?
No, something else.
The rain?
Something else.
I don't think so then. What was it?
The sweet sound of fuck all.
So, listening back to the field recording, we couldn't actually hear any of those EVPs when we were out there. I thought we'd left with nothing, but that recording is actually pretty impressive.
Freeman, I can't help but feel that you'd have been happier if we'd actually come face to face with the murderous tween spirit.
I don't know. I'm annoyed we didn't take any video, especially of the tarot reading, which is the freakiest tarot reading I've ever done. And I spent 2 hours talking to the hermit when I did a reading on acid once.
Oh, that's nice. I always imagine the hermit is a really stand-up guy.
He was. I didn't expect him to be quite so into Duran as he was, but to each their own.
And for the benefit of the listeners, you left that whole tarot deck out there in the caves, didn't you?
Yeah, it's annoying because that was my favorite deck, but I didn't feel all right bringing them away from there after what happened. They belonged to that place after that, and it was such a cool place, too. A great final resting place for them. You know what? I guess I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't get to meet a murderous tween spirit.
Yeah, and you're right. I admit it was a cool place, and spooky, too. And having been there, it really smells like tween spirit.
Polypores will have his revenge on Great Corby.
I was afraid he was going to be a negative creep, but he turned out to be a fun guy.
Damn it. I can't think of any more Nirvana Polypores puns.
Oh, never mind.
But okay. In other Polypores-related news, a listener who has requested that they remain anonymous has sent us a scan of an old newspaper report from the Westmoreland Gazette from 23 November 1991, and it's an article reporting the death of Stephen Buckley. I've looked for hours, and there are no digitized editions of the paper from this date online, so we have no proof that this scan hasn't been tampered with. Although, I really don't know why anyone would do that. We'll put a link in the show notes, of course. Most of the details just confirm what we already know, but there are a few bits which stand out. The main one is this. Now, this article is weirdly graphic for a newspaper report, and it happens to mention that when Buckley was found in St. Constantine's cells, all that was left of him was his bare skeleton, even though he'd been seen alive only a few days before. And the report specifically says that no traces of blood, skin, or any internal organs were found with the body, leading some people to suspect foul play. Although, skimming ahead in the article, it seems that there was insufficient evidence connecting the death to any other person. But look at that. A bare skeleton. Does that sound familiar to you?
A certain Herr Berntsman Holtz, perhaps?
Exactly that. It's just a little detail, but it's so weird. But yeah, here we are. It's now just a few days till Halloween, and I really, really want to get this episode out and released for people to listen to on Halloween night. But I'm not sure how we conclude it now, or if it's even possible to conclude it at all.
Yeah, I suppose we can't force it if it isn't ready to conclude organically. Maybe this is just going to be something to carry on. Remember what we've said before, sometimes it's okay not to know.
True. I know you're right, but I feel like we've been lured so close to finding out what's going on here. The emails have continued to arrive. We've had another 23 since we started making this episode, and if anything, they've got more specific and more similar. 20 of those 23 mention Peter C. Hine and Stephen James Buckley by name. Some of them go into details about episodes of Vayse that they remember or have dreamt that we've never recorded. Episodes about Donnie Darko and Hellier. These are ideas that we've had, Burford, but we've just never put in place. I just don't know what any of it means. It kind of feels like we're being fucked with. Like someone else understands what's going on and we're being made to jump through hoops and go through the motions like we're characters in someone else's story. And whenever we think we might get an answer, it's just slightly out of our reach, like a voice in another room that you can't quite make out.
Yeah, this investigation, the process of making this episode, it's really made me start to doubt everything. If there is another world with another Vayse, if there is another Peter C. Hine who's less of a dick, I mean, he'd have to be, really, and another Stephen James Buckley who didn't die as a kid, and if they host a podcast about weird stuff and call it Vayse, then is there another Bobby D. Freeman and a Mark Edward Burford in that world? What do they do? Are they friends? Do they even know each other? Are both of them even still alive? And if there is another world with another Vayse, are there other worlds too, with other Freemans, Burfords, Hines and Buckleys and other Vayses? And if there is, which is the real Vayse?
So, without any solid kind of conclusion, I was racking my brain to figure out how we could possibly end this episode, and conveniently, something just dropped into our laps. You remember when we first started researching the episode and I reached out to Joseph Matheny, the Dong's Hat guy, right?
Right.
But the guy was AWOL. I spent a good week trying to track him down and put feelers out all through the para-weird community, but nothing. The guy was in the wind. But then, completely out of the blue, this morning, I got a voicemail on my cell phone from someone claiming to be Joseph Matheny. To be clear, when I tried to contact Joseph, I never gave him my cell phone number. I'm pretty guarded with who I give my personal cell phone number to. So I don't know, maybe it's a prank. It seems most likely it's a prank. I don't know. I feel like I'm going out of my mind.
Should we put that actual voicemail in the episode? Are you happy for us to do that?
Sure, I mean, there's no point in not using it, I guess, so here goes nothing.
Hey, Bob, it's Joseph Matheny. I thought I'd leave you a message since I heard you were looking for me. Sorry I couldn't contribute to your podcast. I've been a little bit off the grid, if you know what I mean. But I am familiar with Vayse. I've listened to Vayse a lot. I'm not familiar with you guys so much, but I am familiar with Vayse. I got your emails about the messages you've been getting about Hine and Buckley, and it really caught my interest what you've been going through. I just thought I'd better contact you and let you know. I don't know, man. What can I say? These things happen. These things happen all the time. You're at the center of something right now, something going on, and you guys are at the center of it. And, through all of this, the one thing that you can be sure of is that this will pass. Everything does. And something like this may never happen to you again. And even if it does, it might only happen once more in your lifetime. But chances are that it won't happen to you again. The thing is that something like this will happen to someone else. Maybe not you, but to someone somewhere in this world or another, or something like this is always happening to someone somewhere. You know what I mean? So look at it this way. Something's always happening to someone somewhere. Anything that you can think of, your wildest dream, your darkest nightmare, they're being acted out somewhere. You see what I mean? Everything is happening all the time, and we can't stop it from happening. And most of the time we don't know that it's happening at all. But it is all the time. And this thing that you're experiencing now, whether that's a hoax or it's a conspiracy or it's a coincidence or a synchronicity, whether it's magic or parallel worlds or, I don't know, some kind of spirit contact maybe. Whatever it is, this is yours right now. This is your little bit of the everything that is happening constantly. This little bit is yours. And right now, you might not want it. You might hate it. It might keep you awake at night. It might take over your whole life. But one way or another, eventually it will be gone. It'll be over, ended, and then it's someone else's turn. And you know what? Some people live their whole life without this cosmic spotlight picking them out of the infinite crowd, And some people that light will shine on them, and for that moment, the universe reveals itself to them in all its brutal, comical, confusing, passionate, tragic, devastating brilliance in the way it's revealing itself to you now, and they will just never notice. They will never even blink when that light hits the back of their eyes, oblivious. And I say that without judgment. I mean, it's not calling you to tell you what's best for anyone or how you should be handling this or how you should be living your life. Nah. I guess when you've moved around like I have, you see that most people fall into the last group, oblivious to what the universe is willing to reveal to them. Most people never get the message that's meant for them because they never take the call. They never pick up the phone. They never even notice it's ringing. So when you find yourself in the position that you're in, and you realize that you're in that position, I guess what I'm getting at is that you have to try to enjoy it. And maybe you'll find yourself here again, and maybe you won't. There are some people who spend their whole lives plugged in, lightning rods for that divine spark. Just hit again and again, and you know what? You rarely hear from those people. The language perhaps doesn't exist to communicate effectively what they learn in those cumulative experiences. It's exhausting. And we just live the life given to us. Whether your reality is one that succeeds or one that collapses in on itself, it doesn't matter. Because what you're being told one way or another is that you can take control of the reality that you exist in. And this is going to happen by fate conspiring to make you feel like you have no control at all. But look around you. The great truth is that no one is in control. So forget what everyone else wants for you, what everyone else is trying to make you do. Seize control of your life. Make it what you want. Or maybe not what you want to be, but even better, what you need to be. Look, what I'm trying to say is, the bare bones is that we all walk in many worlds, all the time, but few of us are conscious of it. And the flow, call it what you will, inspiration, creativity, magic, like mycelium networks winding through the fertile compost of time and space, when you feel that flow, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. You might feel like you're not in control, like you're being manipulated, like you're being toyed with, but listen, the trickster can only be the trickster, can only fuck with you if you're not in on the joke, right? However difficult all this seems right now, just smile at the ridiculous situation you find yourself in. Just laugh at the absurdity of it all. Just enjoy it. I don't. I mean, what do I know, right? Anyway, I hope that helps. Take care of yourself. Ciao.
You can see why I was hesitant at first to share it. I mean, what does any of that mean?
Beats me. If you couldn't get hold of him, how did you update him on everything that we've been doing to prep for this episode?
I didn't.
So he hasn't heard what we've recorded so far?
Nope.
He seems to know an awful lot about everything that's been going on.
Yep.
I've listened to that message maybe 23 times, and I keep thinking I've understood it, but when I think about it, really think about it, I don't think I did at all. Maybe that's the point of it.
Yeah, but I guess it got me thinking. I've been worrying about how to find an ending to this episode. I'd wanted closure on the whole thing, but maybe that's not actually what this is about. Is there even such a thing as closure? Matheny said that this will end, and we can be sure of that, but can we? Do we ourselves have the perspective to see the beginning and the end? That's not how life works. We don't get to remember the beginning, and we don't get to remember the end. And that makes me wonder, does anything actually ever end? Does anything actually begin? Or do we just find ourselves suddenly in the middle of it? Like Matheny was suggesting, suddenly in that cosmic spotlight, and all we can do in that moment is our best. How it begins and how it ends is irrelevant, and whether it begins and whether it ends is irrelevant. And I just have to trust that tomorrow I'll wake up again and I'm Bobby D. Freeman. I'm going to do another episode of Vayse, and that's what's real, and that's my reality. Right now, that's my reality. Maybe it's not for me to know why.
Yeah, and this stuff that's happening at the moment with the other Vayse, more and more I start to wonder, what if it's just a hoax and we've just got like really caught up in it and someone somewhere is laughing at us? Like all those people who swear that Ong's hat is real. And it just got me thinking, I just can't be sure. What if this is our hoax, a hoax that we're doing, and we've just forgotten that's what it is? We committed to the hoax so hard that we forgot that it wasn't real, and now we're laughing at ourselves because that's all we've got left to do. Or what if this is a hoax that someone else is acting out through us without us realising? What if someone else somehow roped us into doing this? What if these are someone else's words put in our mouths, someone else's ideas put in our heads? And if that's true, what difference does that make? Right now, I feel like I am the real Mark Edward Burford, and you are the real Bobby D. Freeman, and this is the real Vayse.
Exactly. It's like simulation hypothesis. This is all a simulated reality, and you're not real, and I'm not real. We're just simulated versions of ourselves, and Kyle MacLachlan is a simulated version of Kyle MacLachlan, and Kesha is a simulated version of Kesha, and Jesus Christ was a simulated version of Jesus Christ. And what difference does it make? That's just the nature of the reality we're living in. Just because it's simulated doesn't mean it's not real. It's just a different flavor of reality. And if we're characters in someone else's story, well, we're still characters saying these words right now. To me, that's as real as anything ever has been. And when I drew 3 devil cards in the cave a couple of nights ago, was that like a glitch in the Matrix, or was it just that I got a few of my tarot decks muddled up? I do notoriously have a lot of tarot decks. Maybe there's a reason that people keep emailing us about the other Vayse. Maybe there's something obvious that we've missed, a podcast and a TV show with a similar name. I don't know. Maybe there's a logical, sane, scientific explanation for all of this. And if there is, does that make me feel better? Or does that even make me feel different? Hell no. It really makes you think. Science and not science. Let's just call it magic. Maybe it's just like VHS and Betamax, right? Do you really have to choose a side? Are we going to fight passionately that one is better than the other, that one offers better fidelity, that one is just empirically superior to the other, that one will make the other obsolete and then everyone will have to use just one and not the other? It doesn't matter, because while we're all arguing about this, there'll be a new science and new magic being developed, and we'll have different names for them, and everything will be that little bit clearer and that little bit better defined, but it's still describing the same basic phenomena. To stretch the metaphor to breaking point, like a well-worn videotape, the movie won't have changed despite the differences in quality. The images on the screen will be exactly the same, the soundtrack will be exactly the same, and still we'll be no closer to understanding the process of how the images actually got there, how the composer actually wrote the soundtrack, whether the actors were actually enjoying themselves, or what the director was actually thinking when they put those images on the screen.
And speaking of images on the screen, are we going to do some recommendations?
Another excellent segue. Very professional.
Thanks. I could feel a total nervous breakdown coming on and thought you might need rescuing.
I think you're right. I feel like I'm perhaps guilty of not letting myself enjoy this.
And speaking of enjoyment, what have you been watching, reading, or listening to recently?
A double segue. I admire the dedication.
You're seeing a master at work. Don't make me ask a third time, Freeman.
Third time's a charm, so films. I'd recommend Everything Everywhere All at Once, a film about many timelines. It's funny, it's creative, it's gripping. Other movies about parallel worlds?
Midnight Special? What about Labyrinth, Wizard of Oz, and Alice in Wonderland?
Ooh, they're good ones. And books. His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman.
Weave World and The Great and Secret Show by Clive Barker.
Ong's Hat.
And even, to bring it back to Halloween, The Nightmare Before Christmas, where they all have their different doorways to all the different worlds, each with their own theme.
If there was a theme to this world, what would it be?
Maybe it's the theme of always working on the much talked about Twin Peaks episode of Vayse, but never actually fucking finishing it.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong theme, but we do have loads of other non-Twin Peaks based episodes available for listeners. And if you want more Vayse, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Vayse, and then Vayse spelled backwards. So that's VAYSEESYAV. Our website is www.vayse.co.uk. The podcast is available on all our major podcasting platforms, but it's only at our website that you can get the full unedited show notes. And Keith worked very hard on those. So if you don't go there for us, go there for him. If you have had any weird experiences that you want to share with us, please email us at vayseinfo@gmail.com. We're always happy to hear from you, unless it's about Hine and Buckley, because honestly, I'm over that now. Those guys are losers. This is the real Vayse right here. The soundtrack to the podcast is available on Bandcamp. You can get a link through the website, and it's excellent and immersive music written and performed by our very own Mark Edward Burford under the name Field Lines Cartographer. Go and download it now. Any money that Burford makes, he very kindly puts back into the podcast. And if you want to sling us some change to help keep the lights on at Vayse HQ, we have a coffee, and if you get a regular monthly subscription, you get access to our Discord. There's lots of interesting people hanging out. They do a lot of interesting things, and it's a nice place to be.
It's a really nice place to be. It's my favourite corner of the internet, which in most other ways is a bit of a fucking cesspit, at least as far as social media is concerned. In fact, as a Halloween bonus, we're so keen for you to get involved. The 7 days from October the 31st, 2024, we're offering free membership to the Discord, which you can claim by favourite corner of the internet.
Really enjoyable stuff. I hope to see this. So I think all that remains to be said is thank you to everyone who participated in this episode. Sequoyah Kennedy, Steph Quick, Douglas Batchelor, Darragh Mason, AP Strange, Mike Warburton, and the lovely Helen. Thanks to everyone who has listened. Please tell a friend and give us a 5-star review. It really helps. And finally, happy Halloween to you all.
So, Freeman, before you go, I just have one last question. If you travelled to another world and you had to restart Vayse and there was no Vayse in this other world, but there was a definite gap in the market, there was a niche for Vayse, but naturally the Burford from that world wasn't available or wasn't interested or wasn't capable, who would you choose as your co-host? It can be anyone. I'll even let you choose a fictional character on the basis that they exist in that alternative world.
Ooh, excellent question and well asked. Well, the first and obvious answer Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast
Welcome
about
to
weird
Vayse,
stuff.
a podcast about
Welcome
weird
to Vayse,
stuff.
a podcast about weird stuff.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about
Welcome
weird
to Vayse,
stuff.
a podcast about weird stuff.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff.
Podcast about weird stuff. Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff.
Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff.